Again, my mom did comment on my face and was like, girl. And I was like, I know. And she was like, stop. Hi you guys, welcome back to the Clean Beauty. I'm so excited for this video. We are doing a foundation review and we're doing a try on. Obviously, your girl's looking drab. We are talking about the new Haus Labs foundation, and this is a product I got a lot of requests to try out. So when it came out, I've been trying it out since, and I have a lot of thoughts, and I think you guys are going to find this video very helpful, because it's definitely not like a cheap foundation. It's not the most expensive, but it's definitely not cheap. So I really want to give you all the information that you need. And Haus Labs is not a brand I've talked about on this channel. It's not one that I get a lot of requests for, but this is a product I got a lot of requests for. If you don't know, Haus Labs is Lady Gaga's brand, and it is a brand that is a clean at Sephora brand. So I just want to get into this video. So if you're excited for this video and more videos like this, then please like and subscribe. And without further ado, let's get into this Haus Labs foundation review and try on. Thank God, because your girl needs some makeup. All right, you guys, we are in closer. Let's get into this try on and review. So this is the Haus Labs foundation. And this is definitely a very luxe feeling and heavy bottle. This is heavy. This is the glass bottle. This feels very expensive. And I was actually really surprised that it was so, I don't know, so like hefty and like this adds some weight to your makeup bag. So this is the foundation. I got the shade, and okay, I just want to say, like, picking a shade here was a chore, because you know, like, just putting the person that you feel like matches it doesn't really always make sense for everybody, and I really struggled to find a foundation match. And they don't, I feel like I'm not in the middle. They don't share everything, like all the shots that they have for the foundation with swatches. They don't share all of them on their website, which I found to be really frustrating. I found something that made it easy for me on their Instagram. I'm going to put it on the screen. On their Instagram, that made it easier for me to pick a foundation, but I still kind of struggled. So I got the shade, what is it, 330 medium cool. Now I will say I'm definitely not a cool tone at all, and so I feel like the descriptions are a little bit funky. And but again, like with all brands, like the way that they name things or how they categorize something, I feel like no one's aligned, and we need to all come together, have a kumbaya, and all agree with like what it is, because every time I grab something and it's like cool tone and I'm like, wait, what? You girl ain't cool tone. But this is the foundation. So again, I got 330 medium cool, and I actually think it might be a touch dark for me, maybe not. We're gonna do the full try on, so let me just do a little swatchy poo on the back of my hand for you so you can kind of see. There you go. It's a pretty decent like shade. I mean, I did this on the website, on their website. And so I did see on their website, they will give you a exchange to find the shade match that works for you, which is great. They also have 51 shades, which is wild. Banana sandwiches, like, what is even happening? That's crazy, but I love that. It gives a lot of people a lot of options. So I'm gonna apply again a little bit on the back of my hand. I'm just gonna do one pump. I do feel like a little bit of this goes a long way, and over applying is always a mistake. So we're gonna do just a little pumpy poo, and I'm gonna apply all over my face, and I'm gonna blend it out. You can blend it out, they recommend, with your fingers or a brush. I'm gonna blend it on one side with my fingers and then another side with a brush. So this side we're gonna do fingers. Half and half. Like, doing the half and half face is always tough because I always like overspread it. Okay, so that is the foundation on and blended. It's definitely very much, there's definitely a right way and a wrong way to apply it. I'm going to get into all of that stuff because I've definitely learned using this foundation the way to do it. So I want to just finish the makeup really quick so you can kind of see. I'm not going to powder or anything like that. I'm going to finish my makeup really quick, speed through that, let you see how it kind of is without powder a little bit on top, and then we're going to get into the things that I've noticed, all of that, and do a couple comparisons, not to a ton, but a couple foundations that I feel like kind of are in that same playing field, if that makes sense, the same vibe. So let's get into the makeup. All right, you guys, makeup is on. What do you think of the look? Real basic. I mean, we went real easy peasy, a lemon squeezy with it. Like, we didn't go crazy, but I do really like the way that this makeup look turned out. And this is the foundation, not powdered. So we're going to move on and powder it, but I wanted you to see kind of how it's wearing. It's definitely dewy, and it definitely, I definitely recommend if you are the type of person that has really oily skin or your skin prep is very, very dewy, and you don't like that your foundation is super, super dewy, then powder. Definitely powder, because it can definitely dew up a ton, as you can see. Now I am in studio light, so this is a little bit more dewy than it would have been if I like it's only been 20 minutes or so since I've applied it, so this wouldn't be this dewy for you necessarily, depending on where you live and climate and all of that, but it wouldn't necessarily be this dewy for you if you just applied it and kind of went on with your day. It kind of takes a little bit of time to dew up, but it definitely gets dewy. So let's powder. I'm going to use the Ami Collet setting powder, which is my favorite ones. It's so good, you guys. Oh, powder everywhere. Did you see? I hope that camera caught that. Powder everywhere. And I'm just going to, it's just a translucent one, and I'm just going to take a really fluffy, light brush and do like a light application of it, because I don't want to powder too much, because I like to look dewy and youthful and all of the above, and like just like how dewy your skin looked when you were in like high school. The best. The youthfulness of it all. We're just going to apply kind of around the nose, mustache area for sure. No one likes a sweaty stash area. I mean, maybe you do, I don't. To each their own. Okay, so we're powdered. I'm happy with that. And as you can see, you still have like a very, it's not super, super matte, but it's like a soft matte powder, but it will do up a little bit, and you'll kind of see as the video goes on kind of how it wears with the powder. All right, so let's get into kind of the info of this product and what I think and all of that jazz. So again, I feel like I said this, but I'm gonna say it again. This definitely applies best with your fingers or a brush. If you apply with a sponge, it is patchy. And it's like more patchy and certain. It's very strange the way it applies with the sponge. And I've noticed again that it looks really makeup-y, which is weird because it's a very weird makeup-y look. I don't know how to explain it. It makes it very apparent that I'm wearing makeup, and it doesn't look like skin when I apply it with a sponge. My favorite way to apply it is with a brush, and again, the brush that I use and the brush I always use is the Heavenly Luxe number 7 from It's Cosmetics. So kind of let's move on from that. The way that this wears is really interesting because depending on the way that your skin is, so I'm very oily here, I definitely notice a breaking up around the nose towards the end of the day. That's really where I had like any breaking up and all of that. In areas where I have more fine lines or a little bit more like hyperpigmentation or a little bit more texture, I don't notice that it clings, but I do think depending on your skin prep, this could very possibly, although this seems a little bit crazy for me to say, but on days where I, didn't really prep my skin that like my normal prep, because I like to see how it wears depending on where my skin's at, I do notice it can be slightly drying if I don't prep my skin right. But that's kind of with everything, right? Everything you have to prep it and kind of see the best way for you to apply something for your skin. But it can definitely be a little bit drying, although this is like, she's real dewy, which is, I found really, really interesting. But once I prep it the way that I do, so I do my regular face cream, my sunscreen, all of that stuff. And I don't have like a really crazy morning routine. I try to keep my morning routine as simple as I possibly can, but still putting in all the serums and all of that stuff that I like and need, that my skin needs. Once it in my regular routine, it really, really, it wears really beautifully, and it doesn't like end up looking more crazy, if that makes sense. Now, the way that, again, that it wears throughout the day is it definitely holds on all day, but I will say, if you're oily in the middle, I would say maybe a little bit of a primer might be good. If you prime with just setting spray, fine. If you prime with setting spray and a primer, fine. If you prime with nothing, or you just prime with a face cream or whatever it is, that's fine. But I do find, again, because it is super dewy, for whatever reason around my nose, I do have a little bit more breaking out if I don't necessarily prime. Now, this is a more medium coverage foundation, a more skin-like finish, but I definitely wouldn't call it a natural finish. I would say it's a little bit more dewy. It doesn't patch off throughout the day, which is really nice. Like, I don't get like weird patching where the way, like if I'm wearing it for 12 hours, let's say, or 10 hours, whatever it is, however long I'm up, like 8 p.m., 8 p.m., 8 a.m. to whatever, however long I'm wearing it. I usually go to bed around midnight, but like by the time I get in the mirror and I look at myself, it doesn't have weird patchiness, which I find nice because for a medium coverage foundation, girl. And I do think you can kind of get this to be more medium plus depending on how many layers you apply. Now I did a pump, but I didn't use the entire pump. And this is the coverage that I got. I actually really like the way that this wears. I am personally not a very big foundation person. I mean, I like foundations for occasions like weddings and all of that. But for every day, I prefer something a little bit more serum-y, a little bit more lightweight, like a skin tint or something that is more like a tinted moisturizer, if that makes sense. There are certain foundations that I'm going to talk about, a couple of them today, that I do like to wear. So I want to compare it to those. It is a really beautiful finish and I really do enjoy wearing it throughout the day. And again, my mom did comment on my face and was like, girl. And I was like, I know. And she was like, stop. And I was like, I know, I look so cute. Actually, the conversation didn't go like that, but it went like that in my head. But I'm very happy with how my skin looks and I'd love to know your thoughts down below. Now let's kind of get into the way that it compares to other foundations in my collection. So Haus Labs foundation. Again, I wear the shade 330 in this. This is a great shade match for me. Let me know what you think about the shade match. But let's compare it to the Ilia True Serum foundation. So you know that I love this foundation. This was my wedding day foundation. So girl, you know if it's a wedding day foundation, she's good. So this is the Ilia True Serum foundation. And I wear the shade Morocco in this, and that is kind of my everyday kind of shade. I also have one for summertime that is, I don't know what it is, but I don't have it with me. I can't remember the name. That is a little bit darker. Now I'm going to do a little bit of this. So you can definitely see that the Ilia one is a little bit more on the pink side, a little bit more neutral than this one, but I would say that this one is kind of a neutral olive tone, for sure. So I would say that the Ilia one is actually a slightly better match for my face, even though it doesn't look like it's side by side when you're looking at it on my hand, or at least to me it doesn't. But this one, the Ilia one, is slightly better match. Now the difference here is the Ilia one is definitely, it's a medium coverage, but it is a thinner consistency. And it is, the way that it wears is, although it's medium coverage, I would say that it is less pigmented, and I don't know how to say that in a way that makes sense, but it's less intense in terms of color. So I would say the Haus Labs one can, a little bit goes a long way. Actually, with the Ilia one too, because it's a little bit more spready, but a little bit goes a long way with the Haus Labs one because it is so pigmented, and there's so much pigmentation in it that, like, if you apply too much, whoa, let me tell you, she can look a little crazy. So there's definitely that difference there. I would say that they wear really, really similarly, but the Ilia one does up differently. It doesn't do up the same amount at all. I would say the Ilia one is more of a natural finish to the face, at least on my complexion. It applies a little bit more natural, which is what made it so good for my wedding day. If you're going for something that is super, super dewy and you're taking pictures, you end up looking a little bit more greasy. So that's my only recommendation for wedding day. You didn't ask, but I'm just giving it right now. There's my fun fact of the day. Nothing too dewy for wedding day because it ends up looking like a greasy mess in pictures, although in person it looks like so cute. So there's definitely a difference here in terms of dew. I would say in terms of, not in terms of coverage, but I would say in terms of pigmentation. Both are beautiful foundations. I would say that the Haus Labs one is a little bit heavier. The Ilia one kind of blends a little bit more like a serum, whereas the Haus Labs one wears a little bit more like a foundation. I don't know how to explain it because both are foundations, but one, again, is more serum-y. The Haus Labs one is slightly thicker, but not in a bad way. The Ilia one is really, really thin and has like some nice slip, but it also has like, you see how it didn't drip down all the way. The Ilia one has substance to it, but it is a little bit more light. I don't know how to explain it, but it is these are great foundations and I really enjoy both of them. You have a lot more shade options in the Haus Labs one. You have 51 options in the Haus Labs one, and I do feel like the Ilia one has like 32 or something like that. That could be wrong. That could be wrong, but there's definitely a shade difference here. You have a lot more shade options in the Haus Labs one. So that's the difference there. Okay, so then next we have this one here, the LYS Beauty Foundation, and I wear the shade TN6 in this. So this is also another serum-y foundation. I would say the consistency and all of that is very similar to the Haus Labs one. If I swatch them side by side and I like touch them, they feel very similar. And I love that because it's a nice consistency, but it has like some substance. Again, a little bit thicker than the Ilia one, but not a ton, right? It's not anything crazy. These just have like a touch thicker consistency. The way that this wears is very similar to the Haus Labs one. I would say that the LYS Beauty one has an easier application. They do have a lot of awesome shade options as well in the LYS Beauty one. What I will say is I feel like it wears a little, the application's a little bit easier because you can apply it with a sponge, you can apply it with your fingers, you can apply it with a brush, and there's never an occasion application-wise, like even prep-wise, that I feel like this looks like makeup on the skin, whereas with the Haus Labs one, that was definitely trial and error for me. It was like, she was looking a little crazy, she was looking a little heavy, it was looking like, ooh, your skin's textured, you know, like that feeling where, like, not that feeling, but that consistency that makeup can sometimes have when you put on the skin, it looks more makeup-y and it makes your skin look textured. That I kind of had that when I applied the Haus Labs one with a sponge. I don't have that with the LYS Beauty one at all. Both of these are great foundations. They definitely have a very similar vibe. I would say that the Haus Labs one has a little bit more of that filtered look to the skin. I don't know how to explain it. I feel like my skin looks a little bit more filtered than it does with the LYS Beauty one or the Ilia one. So then let's move on to one of my faves. These, actually all of these are my favorite. The Exa Beauty Foundation. You know how I feel about this. And if you don't, this is a great foundation. Run and get it. It's so good. This is the Exa Beauty Foundation, and this is the shade 270 Rebecca. Now, this foundation, I would say, has a very similar vibe to the Ilia foundation in the way that it kind of sits on the face. And I do find, though, that it's more similar in texture and consistency and pigmentation to the Haus Labs and the LYS Beauty. I would say the Ilia, just in terms of pigmentation, a little less pigmented, but that's not a bad thing. It's just like slightly different. But this is such a good shade match. This is a perfect shade match for me. This is so good. I would say if I had to pick today for my wedding makeup, I might actually do the Exa Beauty Foundation over the Ilia foundation, just because I feel like this is a better shade match for me, just ever so slightly. But they wear really, really similarly. The way that they wear is beautiful. This doesn't patch off. Again, this applies beautifully with all bases and all like applications. So I don't have any weird textured looking skin with this one. I would say this one might be you know, I would say maybe the Exa Beauty Foundation is slightly thinner than the Haus Labs one, but is a little bit thicker than the Ilia one. But thickness isn't a bad thing here. It's just one feels a little bit more serum-y, a little bit more watery, if that makes sense. The Ilia one feels a little bit more watery, but it has great pigmentation. This one has a little bit more substance than the Ilia one, but it is a little less thick than the Haus Labs one. But the Haus Labs foundation is not thick at all. It's just like comparably, right? It's all comparison based. But this is a great foundation. I would say that these are both great. Again, I would say the Haus Labs one has almost more of a little bit more of a filtered look, and I don't know if it's because it's so pigmented of a foundation that you kind of get that. It looks a little bit more filtered because maybe it's a little more pigmented than all the other foundations, but this gives a beautiful filtered look to the face. This gives a very natural, beautiful look to the face. So it's really dependent on your preference here. But they're both great. Again, a little bit more thin, a little bit more filtered look, easier application for sure. I would say all the foundations I've mentioned so far have an easier application in terms of the fact that like anything you use kind of works with it. So if you need a sponge, you're good to go. Whereas with the Haus Labs one, again, we're looking a little textured craziness. Looking a little textured. All right, so then next, let's move on to the last foundation that I have. Oh my gosh, I have makeup everywhere. The Kosas foundation. So here we have the Kosas foundation. I wear the shade 290, I believe. Yeah, 290, all of 290. And I would say that this is definitely a little yellow for me. It's very similar consistency, but I would say that the Kosas one is more serum-y. So there's definitely more serum-y feeling to the Kosas one. I would also say it's a very, very dewy at initial application. I would say these two, actually these three, are the most dewy of all the foundations I mentioned, but these two specifically are the most dewy. So you kind of get a more natural finish with the Exa Beauty foundation and the Ilia foundation, and then you get a little bit more dew, nothing too crazy, but you get more dew with the LYS Beauty, and then you kind of definitely get the most dew out of the Kosas and the Haus Labs foundation. So they're very similar in that vein. The Kosas has just as much pigmentation as the Haus Labs one, but I would say that the Haus Labs one still gives me a little bit more filtered look to the face. And I feel like throughout the day, with initial application, like let's say first couple hours, the Kosas one dews up more throughout the day, like the first couple hours, but the Haus Labs one catches up. She definitely catches up, and they end up being relatively similarly dewy. I would say the Kosas one is maybe a little bit more dewy. The Kosas one also has an SPF of 25, and I would also say the Kosas one runs a little bit like more on the yellow side with their colors. This is a really nice foundation. It wears really nice throughout the day. Do not apply with a sponge. Do not do it. And if it didn't work for you in initial application because you felt like it looked a little bit makeup-y, because I do think that there are some people that feel like it looks a little bit makeup-y, try changing up the way you apply it, or try and use a different tool. It could have been the brush that you used even, right? Like it could have been if you didn't apply with your fingers. Fingers is always like the way that you make everything look the most natural. And I do feel like this sets up relatively quickly. So depending on how quickly you apply it and how many layers you apply, if you do very thin layers a lot at a time, if the one beneath it has set up already, I do also find that you can get a little bit of patchiness. So that's kind of just to note, but this is a great foundation. It is really, really nice. It is a hefty, expensive feeling bottle, if that's something that you care about. But overall, this is a nice foundation. I do enjoy it. And yeah, that's it for my Haus Labs foundation review. Thank you so much for watching. Please don't forget to like and subscribe, and I will see you in the next one. Bye, guys.